He's a monster now, a creature with a human name he barely remembers. He struggles to understand how he became this thing. A memory surfaces of a smiling scientist and a sinister invitation. He recalls the reason he accepted. His country was surrounded by war. But as he looks around, he realizes that was a long, long time ago. Because a nearby monitor displays the current year, 1872, he remembers joining the experiment back in the year 1648, meaning he's been asleep in this ruined lab for over 2 centuries. He looks at the other pods and finds only the remains of failed subjects. He is the only one who survived. He wonders what became of his homeland, the Fultra's Empire, and more importantly, what happened to the family he left behind. The thought sends a jolt of panic through his monstrous form. But he knows he can't get lost in questions he can't answer yet. His first priority is to get outside, and then he can start thinking. He runs through the desolate halls, a graveyard of forgotten experiments. Amidst the decay, he finds a small box of matches, miraculously preserved. He finally makes his way towards what he hopes is the main exit, only to be met with a frustrating realization. The massive gate is sealed shut, the power long since dead. He realizes his pod must have been running on the last dregs of backup power. He wonders how he's supposed to get through a door no human could possibly break. But then he looks down at his own monstrous form, and a new idea begins to take shape. It's time to test the limits of his newfound strength. He winds up and throws a punch with everything he has, only for the gate to send him flying backward across the floor. The failed attempt leaves him steaming and in considerable pain. Still, he can't help but be impressed by his homeland's craftsmanship. But he quickly realizes that admiration won't get him out of here. He sees the skeletons of the other subjects, a grim reminder of what happens to those who fail to escape. A surge of pure defiance courses through him. He refuses to die in this place, unleashing a desperate flurry of blows against the unyielding metal. But when the dust settles, the gate doesn't have a single scratch on it. Suddenly, his rage subsides, replaced by a strange sense of calm. He realizes this lab was designed to contain a rampaging monster, and he'll break himself before he breaks that door. A new thought begins to form in his mind. If he can't get through the gate, maybe he can get through the wall beside it. With renewed determination, he prepares to strike once more. He remembers the name of the experiment, the Genetically Enhanced Soldier Project, a project designed to create an unstoppable weapon. He recalls the scientists boasting about its potential, and with a single punch, he puts their words to the test. The resulting explosion proves their insane experiment was a complete success. He stands in the crater he created, a living weapon unleashed, a body with the strength to shatter solid bedrock with its bare hands. But his victory is short-lived as he looks up in disbelief. He's only broken into the bottom of a massive vertical shaft. Now he faces a 60-meter climb just to reach the outside world. He finally emerges into the sunlight, not even out of breath. But now he's lost, with no idea where he is in the world. As he scales another cliff face, he realizes his gifts go beyond simple strength. Reaching the summit, he prepares to survey the land. But as he focuses, he discovers an unexpected ability. His eyes can zoom. Like a living telescope, he can see distant objects in perfect detail. He spots something artificial far in the distance, a potential clue. But as he scans the horizon, a sense of unease begins to creep in. He's met with a view of a vast, unending forest stretching in every direction, and he knows with chilling certainty that this is not the Fultra's empire he remembers. The sheer weight of his new reality begins to sink in. A jolt of shock runs through his monstrous body. He realizes this vision is just another gift from the experiment. He recalls another function, an emotional inhibitor designed for the battlefield. And while these powers are convenient, he can't shake a feeling of dread. He remembers the scientists who genuinely intended to transform a man into a living weapon. But as he digs his feet into the stone, a new thought takes hold. It wasn't just an intention, he thinks, leaping from the cliff. He lands with the force of a meteor, shattering the ground beneath him, because he is no longer a man, but the very weapon they sought to create. A heavy thud echoes from somewhere deep within the forest. He crashes through the canopy, hurtling towards the ground below. He looks up from the forest floor, confused by what he sees. Before him lies the massive, broken hull of a crashed airship. He cautiously approaches the wreckage, stepping inside to investigate. The interior is a tomb, filled with the skeletal remains of armored soldiers. Amidst the carnage, he spots a small, intact logbook. He recognizes the script as belonging to the northern kingdom of Canaan. The log's final entry reveals the ship was attacked and brought down by a monster. The date in the log confirms his fears. This airship crashed 200 years ago. He was prepared for this and uses the ship's flight path to get a rough idea of his location. Amidst the decay, he also finds some preserved rations. His new body doesn't feel hunger, but his old instincts tell him to eat while he can. With a plan in place, he decides to head east, hoping to find a town. Even if it's in ruins, any information would be better than nothing. He knows the chances of finding anyone alive are slim, but he has to try. Of course, he realizes that his monstrous appearance will likely cause mass panic. But as he's pondering this, something suddenly splatters against his face. He's immediately hit by the most foul, disgusting stench he's ever encountered. He stumbles back, overwhelmed by the putrid smell. Another projectile flies past his head, and he ducks into the bushes to find the source. He quickly identifies the culprits behind the stench, a horde of goblins armed and ready for a fight. And in the center of the mob, he sees two elves being held captive. The goblins' cruel intentions are sickeningly clear, but seeing this injustice awakens something within him. He clenches his fist, a silent promise of what's to come. He knows his body is powerful, but now it's time to see how it fares against other monsters. The goblins' cruel taunts are cut short as they notice the new arrival. He steps into the clearing, deciding it's time to truly test his power. With a silent, brutal greeting, he lunges forward. His first punch lands with devastating force, sending bodies flying through the air like broken dolls. He moves through them with terrifying speed, each blow a killing strike. His bladed tail whips around, another deadly weapon in his arsenal. The scene is one of utter annihilation, a complete massacre. But as he surveys the carnage, he realizes this isn't just a fight. This is a systematic extermination. He brings a living hell down upon the goblin horde. Heavy breaths escape his monstrous form, the only sound in the silence. He stands alone in a field of his own making, a testament to his overwhelming power. He admits to himself that the battle felt less like a struggle and more like a game. Looking down at his hands, he sees the grim reality of what he's become. A moment of clarity hits him. Perhaps he went a little too far. Meanwhile, in a nearby town, life seems to be carrying on as usual. A young adventurer complains to his partner about their current assignment. She reminds him that a good reputation will lead to better jobs in the future. But she can't help but feel that exploration isn't really her strong suit. Her words leave the young adventurer completely starstruck. She playfully teases him, enjoying his flustered reaction. She tells him to grow up a bit first, but they're interrupted by a familiar voice. A young woman and a man run up, asking if they really accepted the forest exploration quest. The witch, Lena, confirms it, explaining that the man's brother was the one who insisted they go, a quest that would take them deep into the Fultra's great forest. But their expedition has already taken a disastrous turn. The adventurers are ambushed, their screams echoing through the trees. They are quickly overwhelmed by a horde of vicious goblins. Lena can only watch in despair, realizing they've drawn the worst possible luck. But elsewhere in the forest, another creature stands in his way. He meets its charge head-on with a devastating punch. The force of the impact shatters the beast's jaw, ending the fight before it can even begin. He stands over his kill, covered in the aftermath. Seeing it as a potential meal, he roasts the creature over a fire. He prepares to dig in, hoping for a decent meal. He takes a huge, hungry bite from the cooked meat. But the taste is not what he expected, and he immediately spits it out in utter disgust. He unceremoniously dumps the creature's carcass into the river. It seems his sense of taste is one of the few human things he has left, a realization that makes a strange amount of sense to him. He considers how much worse it could be, waking up as a mindless beast with no memories. But that thought is quickly pushed aside, because even though he doesn't feel hunger, he feels an overwhelming desire to live. If he survives, he might find a way to become human again, and maybe even see his family. He believes in the strength of his family line, confident that his sister's descendants must have survived the centuries. And he realizes there's no point in dwelling only on the negative. After all, he's starting to find that he actually enjoys the raw power of his new form. He muses that with his current abilities, he'd be perfect if only he could speak. Because while living as a monster might be easy, he still wants to live among humans again. He sits by the fire and considers his options, trying to decide which country would be best to approach. He first thinks of his homeland, the Fultra's Empire, a nation whose scientific prowess was once unrivaled in the world. His first potential destination is the northern kingdom of Canaan, a land with some scientific progress but nothing close to his empires. His other option is the Einherjar Republic to the west, a nation of elves who worship nature. He figures they might be more accepting of his monstrous form, seeing him as a part of the natural order. But he hesitates, knowing that elves are masters of magic, a force he has no defense against. A stray thought then crosses his mind, wondering why he'd only been imagining female elves. The south, he decides, is out of the question for a variety of reasons. and the Eastern Caesarea Kingdom is a place he'd rather avoid entirely. He's also heard that with the recent surge in monster activity, a new profession of monster hunters has emerged, and he knows he'd be their prime target. For now, he decides to head north towards Canaan, find a town, and get a better sense of the world, making sure to avoid any trouble along the way. But a sudden thought makes him pause. He can't help but feel like he just jinxed himself, though he quickly dismisses the idea. Meanwhile, Lena the witch complains to her party. She reminds them that their job is to hunt monsters, not wander aimlessly through a forest. The group sits around a fire, discussing the vague nature of their quest to simply explore the area. The man who pushed for the quest explains it's related to the elves' recent claim over this land, which he clearly resents. The young adventurer excitedly suggests the elves might be hiding some legendary treasure from the old empire. But Lena dismisses the idea, calling any imperial treasure useless scientific junk to her people. The blonde adventurer, however, seems to be enjoying the trip. She likens it to a picnic, though her partner reminds her that this is still a dangerous job. Lena playfully grabs the blonde woman, complaining about her uptight brother. The older sister apologizes for the tension, thanking Lena for trying to lighten the mood. She teases the younger woman like a little sister, much to the amusement of the men watching. The brother's friend quietly asks if he's ever going to confess, especially with his sister right there. For a moment, they all believe these peaceful days will last forever. The two women share a laugh, completely unaware of the fate that awaits them. A final, fleeting thought on how happy she once was. But that peace is shattered in an instant as the ambush begins. Lena can only watch, frozen in utter shock. The older sister stares in disbelief at the sudden violence, and her brother is paralyzed by the sheer chaos of the attack. The goblins overwhelm them, and Lena screams out her friend's name. But it's too late. Her friend is slammed against the rocks with brutal force. The brother turns just in time to see his own companion taken down. A surge of adrenaline finally cuts through his terror, but he's immediately swarmed, dragged to the ground by the vicious horde. With a surge of rage, Gista prepares to fight back against his captors. But his eyes widen in shock at what stands before him. He's face to face with the massive orc leading the goblin horde. And in an instant, the orc strikes him down with overwhelming force. His sister screams his name, watching the horrific scene unfold. Lena can only cry out in anguish, powerless to stop the slaughter. She realizes with trembling legs that they were completely careless. They've fought goblins before, but never an organized army led by an orc. Lena admits they miscalculated, trapped in the ruins with no way out. And now, the orc leader charges forward to finish them off. But as the orc charges, a goblin raises a crystalline shield, deflecting her attack. Lena realizes with fury that it's an anti-magic shield meant for knights. Her spell dissipates harmlessly, leaving her completely vulnerable. A chilling thought grips her. They're all going to be wiped out. She turns in panic, her attention drawn to her friend. The blonde adventurer, Renata, is quickly being swarmed by the goblins. Lena can only scream her friend's name in absolute terror. But in the next moment, the horde descends upon her as well. She struggles as the goblins begin to tear at her clothes. All around them, the adventurers are captured, their cries echoing in the ruins. Renata cries out Lena's name, completely overwhelmed. Lena can only apologize, tears streaming down her face as she's held down. The goblins swarm them, their cruel intentions sickeningly clear. Lena realizes there's only one way out of this nightmare. She makes a grim decision, choosing death over this fate. But before she can act, a blur of motion cuts through the chaos. Her eyes widen, unable to process what just happened. The goblins freeze, their attention drawn to a new, terrifying presence. A monstrous figure stands before them, an unexpected savior. He has placed himself directly between the horde and their captives. His gaze is fixed, his mind racing to process the scene. The goblins recoil in confusion, unsure what to make of this new monster. But his attention is momentarily distracted by the captive witch. He admits he was only drawn here by the goblin's stench and didn't expect to find any humans. He takes a moment to assess the chaotic situation before him. He scans the battlefield, noting the fallen adventurers and the few survivors. He sees Lena still struggling against her captors. While her friend Renata is in the same desperate situation, a sudden almost comical realization hits him, and with a protective, if slightly misguided gesture, he prepares to intervene. Lena watches in disbelief as the monster effortlessly swats away the goblins holding her down. She can't comprehend why another monster would be saving them. But from the ruins, a new threat emerges. A goblin mage. It unleashes a dark spell with a vicious snarl, striking our hero directly in the back of the head. He turns completely unfazed, wondering if that was supposed to be magic. A goblin with a massive shield steps forward to protect its caster. The mention of magic seems to pique our hero's interest. The shielded goblin charges forward, ready to attack, but is met with a single devastating punch that ends the fight instantly. Lena holds her friend close, trying to offer some comfort in their final moments. But her attention snaps back to their savior, realizing her most powerful spell didn't even faze him. The orc leader finally steps forward, recognizing a worthy challenger. Our hero identifies him as the boss, though a stray thought shows his human mind is still active. The two titans face off, ready for a battle that will shake the ruins. A monstrous grin spreads across his face. He's ready to see what this orc can do. The orc makes the first move, charging in with a furious roar. He brings his massive club down with bone-shattering force, striking our hero directly across the head. Lena watches in horror, remembering that a similar blow was enough to take down her companion. She realizes with dawning horror that the blow didn't even faze him, but our hero is completely unimpressed by the attack. He counters with a single punch, calling the orc a disappointment. The force of the blow sends the orc leader flying into the stone wall. Lena can only stare in wide-eyed disbelief at the display of power. The goblin horde is frozen in a state of collective shock. The orc's face is completely caved in from the devastating impact. But our hero isn't finished, leaping into the air after his opponent. He brings his fist down with the force of a falling meteor, ending the orc leader in a single brutal strike. The ground is littered with the remains of the goblin horde. He flexes, admitting to himself that he might have gotten a little carried away. He then turns his attention back to the two survivors. Lena holds her friend close, both of them still trembling with fear. He tries to reassure them, indicating that he means them no harm. But Lena's fear quickly turns to a very different kind of shock. He decides to take some supplies as payment for saving their lives. He finds a small potion, a welcome and useful discovery. He also helps himself to a sword, figuring he could use a proper weapon. Lena can only watch in stunned silence as their savior loots her fallen comrades, but Lena suddenly cries out, begging him not to take that particular sword. She pleads with him, offering anything else in exchange for that one blade. Her voice is filled with a desperate, frantic energy, but he just stands there, realizing he can't understand a single word she's saying. Deciding it's not worth the trouble, he simply tosses the sword aside. Lena tries to explain that the sword is a precious memento of their team, a painful reminder of the friends she just lost. Confused by her outburst, he simply turns and walks away. Lena's hope crumbles, believing he's just another heartless monster. But her despair turns to rage as she vows to hunt him down for this desecration. He can feel her rage and wisely decides it's time to leave. He figures he'll never see her again, completely unaware of the flag he just raised. But later, sitting alone by a fire, he's filled with a profound sense of regret. He thinks back to the sword he took from the adventurers. He discovered it was a rare and powerful magic sword, a weapon so valuable, yet it couldn't even leave a lasting scratch on his skin. He realizes that despite saving them, he's ruined any chance of a peaceful encounter. Meanwhile, back at a small shelter, Renata asks Lena if she's really going. Lena looks down, her expression hardened with resolve. She promises to get their sword back, telling Renata to wait for her return. Renata breaks down, overwhelmed by the loss of her friends and family. Lena pulls her into a tight embrace, offering what little comfort she can. She promises Renata that she will get their memento back, no matter what. But Renata is terrified of being left completely alone in the world. Lena knows she can't ask her friend to join such a dangerous mission. She only wants to make sure that at least one of them survives this tragedy. Renata can only apologize, her voice choked with tears. But Lena's resolve is unshakable. Giving up now is not an option. She vows that the monster will pay for what he's done. And miles away, our hero gets a strange feeling that he's just made a powerful enemy. The night passes quietly under a star-filled sky. He realizes his new body doesn't seem to require sleep, a strange and unsettling discovery. Deciding to use the time wisely, he prepares to travel through the night. He gathers the few supplies he managed to salvage from the adventurers, but the small pack is already straining at the seams, clearly not made for him. He begins to list all the things he's missing, from a bigger bag to better food. The more he considers his situation, the more he realizes he needs. His only option is to find a town and acquire the proper gear. As the first light of dawn breaks through the trees, he finally spots something promising on the horizon, but his hopes are dashed when he finds only the ruins of a town. Amidst the rubble, however, he spots something familiar. It's an old anti-aircraft gun, a nostalgic relic from his era. He remembers how his empire used its scientific might to fend off monsters from the sky. But this success led to diplomatic problems, as fleeing monsters caused chaos in neighboring lands. Back in the present, he tries to find a sign to identify the town, but the words are illegible. He then spots a town map, hoping it will provide some answers. He can just make out the name, Isle Cuel, a town he remembers from the northeast. With this information, he's finally able to pinpoint his location on a larger map. Now that he has his bearings, he prepares to explore the ruins for any useful supplies. But as he explores, he's hit by a familiar, disgusting stench. He immediately recognizes the smell of goblins, ruining any chance of a quiet search. A cold fury builds within him. He decides to wipe them out. He sets his meager supplies aside, not wanting them damaged in the coming fight. With a powerful leap, he launches himself towards the source of the smell. He finds the goblins playing a crude game with a human skull. Their twisted fun is cut short as they notice his sudden arrival. He charges into their midst without a moment's hesitation. His first punch lands with explosive force, obliterating one of the creatures instantly. He stands amidst the carnage, the remaining goblins scattering in absolute terror. He stands unfazed, covered in the aftermath of his first strike. But he notices something strange. They're all fleeing in the same direction. He realizes they must be running towards something important. But instead of scattering, they turn to face him, a coordinated defense. He tears through their ranks, a whirlwind of destruction. He sees their movements are organized, almost like a trained unit. It dawns on him that they must be protecting something further inside the ruins. A new objective now clear in his mind. He follows the fleeing creatures towards a large, dilapidated building. He figures a place like a school gymnasium would be the perfect spot for a nest. The stench grows stronger, almost making him sick. With a single kick, he smashes through the door to the nest. Inside, he finds the source, a massive goblin queen surrounded by her horde. Her grotesque face snarls, the ruler of this foul den. He realizes she's the one breeding this endless army of monsters. A living factory, churning out new soldiers at an impossible rate. But to him, this is just another problem to be eliminated. He launches himself directly at the queen, his one and only target. The goblin horde scatters in absolute terror at his sudden assault. He carves a path through them, tossing the creatures aside like dolls. He scoffs at their pathetic attempt to protect their queen. He unleashes his full fury, tearing through the useless horde. A cold, merciless grin spreads across his face. The floor is quickly littered with the remains of the goblin army. With the minions cleared, he turns his attention to the final target. But the overwhelming stench makes him hesitate, not wanting to get any closer to the foul creatures. He decides he'll have to kill them without engaging in close combat. The remaining goblins watch in confusion as he stops his assault. He reaches down and rips a massive chunk of stone from the floor. The only problem now is whether he can control his strength enough to aim it. He figures a target that massive should be easy enough to hit. With a powerful heave, he launches the makeshift projectile. It smashes into the queen's shoulder, not quite the headshot he intended. He's a little disappointed he missed his mark, but it was a solid hit. He immediately prepares a second shot, aiming for center mass this time. The next boulder finds its target, tearing straight through the queen's torso. A stray goblin is caught in the crossfire, instantly taken out by the impact. The goblin queen lies defeated, her reign of filth finally over. For a moment, he imagines a beautiful elf rewarding him for his efforts. But the grim reality is that he's covered in gore and desperately needs to find a river. Feeling refreshed and clean, he's ready to continue exploring the ruins. He figures a town of this size must have a central hub for supplies. And after a bit of searching, he finds exactly what he was hoping for. His eyes light up with pure, unadulterated joy. Before him stands a massive, abandoned shopping mall. Inside a sporting goods store, he finds a backpack large enough for his frame. Next, he grabs some cookware, already imagining a proper meal. The abandoned building is a paradise for a survivor like him. He even finds a cooler, perfect for storing any future kills. He checks the mall directory, planning his looting spree with surprising efficiency. He meticulously plans his shopping, considering what supplies are still viable after 2 centuries. Fully equipped, our hero proudly displays his new gear, a testament to his successful scavenging. But a sudden thought strikes him, demanding answers about his lost Fultres empire. He settles down amidst a pile of old newspapers and magazines, eager for any news of the world. Though many documents have deteriorated, he manages to piece together some information from the old papers. He learns the Fultres Empire's war efforts were failing, with the Western Front collapsing to the Einherjar elves. But one detail in particular catches his attention, a chilling revelation. He discovers that all records abruptly cease after May 25, 1667. A chilling article from that very date speaks of a decision to deploy the ultimate weapon. The words echo in his mind, a terrifying implication of what truly happened. A terrible premonition takes hold, a feeling only a true citizen of the Empire could understand. He wonders if his homeland, in its desperation, truly chose to destroy itself. The silence that follows is heavy with unspoken grief. He admits he's been avoiding the thought, but knows he must eventually go. The only way to know for sure is to see the imperial capital for himself. He lies back, realizing the only thing stopping him now is his own resolve. He decides to head for the border town of Duel first, to get a feel for the kingdom of Canaan. With a plan set, he finally allows his body to rest. Elsewhere, a man receives a new assignment: goblin hunting in the Duel ruins. The request comes from a man of authority, who admits the job is troublesome and requires a skilled team. The man, Orlando, is asked to take on the difficult assignment. He accepts with a confident grin, seeing it as good training for his new recruits. He makes sure the reward will be worth their while, which is quickly confirmed. And so, his mercenary group, the Dawn's Battlefield, officially accepts the Great Goblin Cleanup. Meanwhile, in the forest, another group of goblins chatters away, completely unaware of their impending doom. But their noise is suddenly replaced by an unnerving silence. A silent observer watches them from the cover of the trees. Our hero steps out from the shadows, his massive form towering over the creatures. He strikes a friendly pose, cheerfully introducing himself as Yunsi. He internally panics, realizing his attempt to use a stealth ability somehow made him completely visible instead. His attempt at a friendly introduction goes horribly, horribly wrong. In his panic, he accidentally sends one of the goblins flying into a nearby tree. He's once again left in awe of his body's overwhelming power, a marvel of imperial science. He recalls waking up that morning, realizing he'd slept soundly despite not feeling any fatigue. His body may not need food or sleep, but he knows he can't afford to be careless in this new world. And as he travels, another group of adventurers heads towards the very same destination. He uses his enhanced vision to scan the horizon, finally spotting the border town of Duel in the distance. But as he gets closer, he's met with a familiar and unwelcome sight. The town is already swarming with goblins, pouring out from the ruined buildings. He notices the goblins seem to be fleeing from something, wondering if they're already fighting Canaan's forces. Deciding to use his reconnaissance abilities, he moves in for a closer look. He effortlessly carves a path through the fleeing horde, clearing the way. Arriving inside the ruins of Duel, he finds the source of the commotion. From a high vantage point, he watches the battle unfolding below. He identifies the human soldiers as a well-known mercenary group from the kingdom of Canaan. But the odds are grim. A small band of 50 soldiers is completely surrounded by hundreds of goblins. Their commander shouts orders, trying to maintain formation amidst the chaos. Yunsi quickly identifies the man as the captain, his tactical commands holding the line together. He notes that while some of the fighters are inexperienced, their leader is using them effectively. But the mercenaries are relentless, carving a path through the endless sea of goblins. Yunsi watches as his estimated 300 goblins are wiped out in a matter of moments. He's actually a little annoyed, realizing the goblins are too weak to be a proper test of the soldiers' power. He was hoping to learn more, but this one-sided slaughter isn't telling him much. The commander then orders one of his mages to use a detection spell, searching for any remaining threats. A wave of magical energy expands from the group, sweeping across the ruins. But the spell suddenly washes over Yunsi's hiding spot, catching him completely by surprise. He's confused for a moment, wondering what just hit him as he feels no pain at all. Down below, the mage cries out in alarm, pointing directly at his location. Yunsi realizes with a jolt that the detection magic somehow found him, despite his stealth. The commander immediately orders his troops to give chase. With his cover blown, Yunsi leaps from the building and makes a run for it. He's genuinely surprised that they're actually pursuing him. The mercenaries charge after him, determined not to let their target escape. Yunsi curses his carelessness, realizing he has far too much to deal with to fight humans right now. But one of the mages seems confident they can catch him, boasting that his own speed should be more than enough. He unleashes a powerful spell that explodes right at Yunsi's heels. Yunsi glances back, wondering if that little burst of fire was supposed to be a threat. He turns around, almost annoyed by their persistence. The commander steps forward, a crystalline blade in hand. A confident smirk spreads across his face, clearly enjoying the hunt. But Yunsi is just confused by their aggression, a feeling that quickly turns to pure, unadulterated rage. He can feel the thrill of battle coursing through his veins. He clenches his fist, reminding himself that he doesn't want to fight humans. But he knows there's no guarantee he can control his overwhelming power. After all, he thinks, looking at the stunned commander, they were the ones who started this, and now he's more than happy to finish it. The commander can only stare, realizing this is no mere ogre they're facing. The commander admits he's never seen a monster with such a powerful aura. His second-in-command agrees, sensing the immense danger radiating from their opponent. But a thrill-seeking grin spreads across the commander's face. He orders the new recruits to fall back, knowing this is a fight they can't handle. The veteran mercenaries step forward, forming a line to face the unknown threat. Yunzi acknowledges the commander's sound judgment, impressed by his tactical mind. He decides that if they're going to take this seriously, then he'll be more than happy to respond with his full power. The commander wastes no time, shouting the order to attack, and his mages immediately unleash a coordinated magical assault. The archers let loose a volley of arrows, aiming to pin him down, but the projectiles simply bounce off his armored hide, completely ineffective. Even a direct hit to the chest fails to leave so much as a scratch. The commander can only stare in disbelief, realizing the creature is completely unharmed. He orders his vanguard to charge, hoping to slow the monster's advance. A soldier thrusts his spear forward with everything he has, but the weapon shatters on impact against Yunzi's face. The man is left completely stunned, his best attack having done nothing. Another mercenary tries to grapple him, a desperate attempt to hold him in place, but Yunzi effortlessly swats him away, annoyed that he has to hold back this much. The commander watches in disbelief as his men are tossed aside like toys, but his shock quickly gives way to a grim, excited smile. He declares that a real fight is finally getting his blood pumping. Yunzi braces himself, knowing this is what the commander wanted from the start. With a powerful roar, the commander leaps forward, bringing his sword down. The blade connects with Yunzi's arm, a direct and powerful strike. Yunzi admits the man is fast for his size, but it's still not enough, because to him the attack is moving in slow motion. The commander's eyes widen in absolute shock at the impossible dodge. His men can only cry out, realizing their captain's ultimate attack was just avoided. Yunzi casually parries the commander's attack with a single hand. The commander realizes the casual dismissal of his attack is shattering his troops' morale. He can't comprehend what kind of creature he's even fighting. This isn't just a monster, it's something else entirely. But from behind him, his second-in-command steps forward. Her eyes are filled with a cold, unwavering determination. Without a word, she rushes past her captain, charging straight for Yunzi. The commander can only cry out her name in alarm, Annie, but she ignores him, letting out a fierce battle cry. Yunzi turns his head, finally acknowledging the new challenger, but he's momentarily distracted, flustered by the blonde woman's sudden appearance. He snaps back to reality just in time to block her attack. She moves with a speed that catches him completely off guard. Yunzi is genuinely surprised, realizing she's the fastest human he's encountered. But his surprise turns to alarm as she immediately changes tactics. She pulls out a crossbow, her eyes filled with deadly intent. A weapon he was not at all prepared to face. He uses his enhanced vision, locking on to her every move. The commander and his men can only watch the scene unfold. Their faces are filled with panic, realizing the danger she's in. She fires her crossbow at point-blank range, a desperate final gambit. But her eyes widen in terror as she realizes what she's truly facing. The bolt simply sticks in his head, a completely ineffective attack. He casually plucks the arrow from his skull without so much as a flinch. The commander can only stare, stunned that a shot at that range did nothing. Yunzi looks down at her, his patience clearly wearing thin. The younger mercenaries can only watch in absolute horror. Orlando screams out her name, realizing the grave danger she's in. But Yunzi simply grabs her, lifting her into the air with a single hand. Annie struggles against his grip, completely powerless against his strength. But his human mind is once again distracted by her well-trained physique. He considers just tossing her aside to get her out of the fight. But as she struggles, something completely unexpected happens. With a surge of defiance, she tears her own clothes to break free, a move that leaves him completely stunned. And his tactical assessment is once again sidetracked. But Orlando sees the monster's momentary distraction. He screams at his men, realizing this is their only chance. They know they can't let the opening Annie created go to waste, and the entire mercenary group charges forward to overwhelm him. Yunzi accepts their challenge, ready to face them all. The mercenaries swarm him from all sides in a coordinated assault. One of the soldiers swings his axe with all his might, only for the weapon to shatter against Yunzi's armored skin. He effortlessly swats them aside, sending them flying. His bladed tail whips around, taking down another soldier in a flash. Orlando can only watch in fury as his men are overwhelmed. He charges forward, his blade glowing with magical energy. But Yunzi meets his charge with a punch of his own, stopping the commander's ultimate attack with a single hand. Orlando can't believe his ultimate attack was stopped so easily, but his shock quickly turns to a new resolve. because Annie has already charged past him, moving in for an attack of her own. Her face is a mask of pure determination as she swings her blade. Yunsi is taken aback, recognizing the weapon as a magic sword. The blade slices into his side with a powerful strike. And for the first time, the attack actually draws blood. A wild, triumphant grin spreads across Annie's face. But her victory is short-lived as the wound begins to heal instantly, leaving her completely stunned by his regenerative abilities. Orlando can only stare, realizing even a magic sword did nothing. But Yunsi's eyes narrow, having read her every move. A grim realization dawns on the commander. They cannot win this fight. His mind races, searching for any possible way out of this. He knows his only priority now is to get as many of his people away as he can. He prepares to sacrifice himself, wondering how long he can possibly hold the creature back. But Yunsi simply gestures for him to come forward. The taunt leaves Orlando completely stunned. Annie and the others can only watch, shocked by the monster's audacity, because Yunsi is pointing directly at him, challenging the commander to a one-on-one duel. Orlando asks if the monster will spare his people in exchange for his life. Annie and the others cry out, begging their captain not to do this. But Orlando just grins, accepting the one-on-one duel he's been offered. Yunsi realizes he may have underestimated the commander's resolve. The mercenaries can only watch as the battle turns into a one-sided hunt. Yunsi knows that to end this, he'll have to settle things decisively. He gestures for the others to stand down, clearing the field for the duel. He decides there's only one way to handle this situation. He walks past the stunned commander and his second-in-command, and lets out a roar, not at them, but at the ruins behind them. Orlando tells his men to stand back, promising to buy them all a drink when this is over. He then turns to Annie, scolding her for her reckless and revealing maneuver. His words bring tears to her eyes, a mix of frustration and concern for her captain. He turns away, silently apologizing for putting his team through this. With his resolve hardened, he prepares to face his opponent alone. But Yunsi knows better than anyone that this fight is already decided. The commander understands the massive gap in their power and that the monster has been holding back. He realizes this intelligent creature was waiting for him, and a thrill runs through him. His troops can only watch in horror, understanding the sacrifice their captain is about to make. And with a final battle cry, Orlando charges forward, ready to give his life for his people. But Yunsi just stands there, silently observing the commander's resolve. Orlando accepts the challenge, a grim determination in his eyes. He declares that he has no intention of going down without a fight. But instead of facing the attack, Yunsi simply turns and offers his back as an open target, a gesture of pure contempt. The mercenaries can only watch, completely baffled by this bizarre turn of events. Annie clutches her torn clothes, unable to comprehend the monster's actions. With a deafening crash, the commander's blade comes down with all its might. He puts every last ounce of his strength into the blow, striking Yunsi directly in the back with devastating force. But instead of cutting through, the blade simply stops dead against his armored hide. Orlando's eyes widen, realizing the monster is moving with impossible speed. Before his attack can even fully land, Yunsi has already turned to face him. He catches the commander's arm mid-swing, stopping the powerful blow with a single hand. Orlando can only grit his teeth, his ultimate attack rendered completely useless. Annie and the others can only scream in terror, watching the scene unfold. Yunsi lifts the commander into the air as if he weighs nothing at all. But even now, Orlando refuses to surrender, his fighting spirit unbroken. He desperately reaches for his fallen sword, determined to land just one more blow. But a look of dawning horror crosses his face as he realizes the absolute futility of his struggle. The commander's sword clatters to the ground, his hand covered in the aftermath. He looks up, accepting that this is the end of the line for him. His comrades can only scream his name in absolute terror, but instead of a final blow, Yunsi simply spits the commander out onto the ground. Orlando is left completely drenched and utterly bewildered by the bizarre turn of events. His entire team can only stare, their minds unable to process what they just witnessed. The battlefield falls into a stunned and awkward silence. Yunsi then makes a strange, almost apologetic gesture towards the downed commander. Orlando wonders what just happened, questioning if he's been poisoned. Annie and the others look on, completely unsure how to react to this absurd situation. Orlando is left questioning his own hygiene after the bizarre and humiliating attack. His troops are equally stunned, with one of them guessing it's been about 3 years. And with that, our hero makes a hasty retreat from the awkward scene. The mercenaries are left completely disgusted by the entire ordeal. Yunsi realizes he only meant to scare them off, but ended up thoroughly humiliating them instead. Still, He figures it's a win since no one had to die, though his attention is once again drawn to Annie. He quickly shakes off the distraction, refocusing on his original mission to scout Canaan. But as he travels, he picks up the distinct and familiar scent of human blood. It's distant, but he decides his convenient new body is perfect for investigating. With a powerful leap, he heads towards the source of the smell. He arrives to find a gruesome scene, the bodies of travelers strewn across the road. He quickly deduces this wasn't the work of monsters. Their gear has been stolen. Wagon tracks lead deeper into the forest, a clear sign of bandits and stolen cargo. A cold resolve settles over him. He figures if they're willing to kill for loot, they won't mind if he takes it from them. And so he follows the trail to the bandits' camp. He makes a grand entrance, his monstrous form striking terror into their hearts. One of them peeks out from the wagon, his face a mask of pure fear. A single terrifying roar is all it takes to break their will. The would-be thieves scatter in every direction, abandoning their prize without a second thought. One of the bandits begs for his life, but Yunsi has already moved on. He admits it's much easier when his opponents just run away. He approaches the abandoned wagon, wondering what kind of treasure they were hauling. But inside he finds not treasure, but a group of captive women huddled together. He takes a moment to process this unexpected discovery. The women can only stare back in absolute terror, unsure of their fate. But his human mind can't help but appreciate the unexpected sight. He quickly deduces they were likely being sold as slaves or brides. Still, he knows what he truly needs right now are practical supplies, not more complications. But then a new, much better idea begins to form in his mind. He decides that this is exactly what he'll do. The women inside the wagon wonder if they've actually been saved. But their hopes are shattered as he suddenly slams the door shut, leaving them trapped inside, completely terrified of their new captor. He peeks back in one last time, satisfied with his new cargo. With the wagon secured, he prepares to haul it away himself. A determined look on his face, his plan now in motion. He picks up the scent of the fleeing bandits on the wind. Another testament to his empire's science, enhancing all 5 of his senses. But he can't help but curse them for not giving him the ability to speak. He realizes that with a body like this, he doesn't even need a weapon. He hides the wagon in the bushes, preparing to track down the bandits. The scent leads him to a dark cave entrance, the smell of humans growing stronger. He cautiously enters, wondering if this is where the bandits have made their hideout. He's surprised by the lack of guards, figuring they must be overconfident in their remote location. But he notes the interior is surprisingly well constructed for a simple cave. And a sudden discovery makes him pause in his tracks. Before him stands a makeshift prison, the bars crudely set in the stone. Inside, he finds the skeletal remains of a previous captive. And huddled in the corner is another woman, barely clinging to life. A wave of pure disgust washes over him at their cruelty. He clenches his fist, deciding these men deserve no mercy. But a sudden scream from deeper inside the cave draws his attention. He immediately runs towards the sound, leaving the prison behind for now. Meanwhile, the bandit leader scolds one of his men for abandoning his post. He rages at the sheer incompetence of his underlings. But his tirade is cut short as Yunsi makes his grand entrance. His eyes immediately fall upon their loot, a collection of valuable stolen goods. He stands silently for a moment, letting the tension build. Then, with a casual stretch, he decides it's time to end this and free the captives. He approaches a door but immediately runs into a rather comical problem. The entrance is far too small for his massive frame to fit through. He imagines the bandit leader having the same undignified struggle just to get inside. Deciding that's not a good look for him, he steps back to try a different approach. He braces himself, preparing for a much more direct entrance. He winds up a punch, focusing all his power into a single point of impact. And with one explosive blow, he smashes through the entire wall instead. Even he seems a little surprised by the sheer destructive force of his attack. But his attention is immediately drawn to the bandit leader, who is revealed to be a horrifying spider-like monster. Yunsi can only stare, completely caught off guard by this unexpected development. The creature has the upper body of a man, fused to the grotesque lower half of a giant spider. But what truly shocks Yunsi is when the creature speaks, accusing him of stealing its captives. It's speaking the language of the Fultress Empire, a fact that seems to enrage the creature itself. A dawning horror washes over Yunzi as he puts the pieces together. He realizes this isn't just a monster, it's another experimental soldier from his homeland. Meanwhile, back in a civilized office, a man stares in disbelief. A rather dashing young man named Arngale seems to be the source of his shock. But the man is actually speaking to Orlando, asking why the mercenary captain is suddenly so well dressed. Orlando tries to explain the situation, while his team complains about the lingering goblin-like stench. He confirms the goblin extermination was a success, but admits there's some bad news. He reports that they encountered a completely new species of monster. He explains that even with his entire company, they couldn't make a dent in the creature. He admits with a grim expression that it was a complete and utter defeat. He describes the creature as a gray-skinned humanoid, roughly the size of an ogre, with a bladed tail. He recounts how neither their weapons nor their magic had any effect on it. The monster was not only powerful and agile, but also possessed a high degree of intelligence. He can only laugh at the absurdity of facing such an overwhelming opponent. Arngale leans forward, asking if even Orlando's legendary giant-slaying skills were useless. Orlando admits with a pained expression that he couldn't even land a proper hit. Arngale asks what it would take to defeat such a creature, and Orlando suggests they'd need a high-level magic swordsman. He then scoffs, predicting that even the royal knights would be completely wiped out. The news leaves Arngale with a massive headache, questioning if this is the official report. He tasks Orlando with handling any future encounters, and the commander casually agrees to do what he can. Arngale sighs, worried that this might just be the first of many such creatures to appear. Orlando quickly tells him not to even think about such a grim possibility, because back in the cave, Yunsi knows that if more creatures like this one were to appear, humanity would be wiped out in the blink of an eye. The spider creature snarls, its rage directed entirely at our hero. He's certain he heard his native tongue, the language of the Fultra's Empire. He tries to explain that he's also from the Empire, another experimental soldier. But the creature just screams at him, refusing to listen to another monster. A new idea strikes him. If he can't speak, he'll have to write. He raises a hand, preparing to trace a message into the dirt. But he's suddenly caught, bound by what feels like invisible threads. The spider creature taunts him, telling him not to move without its permission. He realizes with a jolt that the entire cave was already booby-trapped. Unsi can only curse his own carelessness, calling himself an amateur. The spider creature then turns its rage on a human captive, ending him for his incompetence. The spider creature rages, blaming Unsi for interrupting its twisted plans. It throws a childish tantrum, screaming about how much effort it took to find its prey. Unsi, however, seems to understand the feeling of losing something important. He thinks back to the other subjects, who never reacted to anything at all. The spider creature reminisces about a past event, wondering if it should try it again. It reveals its cruel intentions to capture a mother and child for a twisted game. His words paint a horrifying picture of what awaits the captive woman in the cell. The creature cackles, wondering what kind of sick game it should play this time. But Yunsi has heard more than enough. And with a single flex, he shatters the threads and the very ground beneath him. He understands the feeling of being changed, of having no one left in the world. But even so, he knows this creature is an enemy that must be stopped. With his resolve hardened, he charges forward to end this now. The spider creature scoffs, taunting that threads made for humans can't stop a real monster. Yunsi realizes his opponent is underestimating him, but knows rushing in would be a mistake. He decides to keep his distance for now, assessing the situation. But the spider creature makes the first move, using its threads to launch a body at him. Yunsi is immediately ensnared, the razor-sharp threads digging into his flesh. He spins with incredible speed, realizing the sheer volume of threads that were laid in wait. The spider creature screams in fury, enraged by his defiance. The spider creature lunges forward, screaming that it doesn't care about the past. But Yunsi stands his ground, still bound by the razor-sharp threads. The creature brings its powerful claws down, ready to tear him apart. It vows to crush him for his insolence. It lands a devastating blow directly to Yunsi's head, declaring the fight is over. The impact echoes through the cave, a seemingly fatal strike. Yunsi is slammed into the ground with overwhelming force. But the spider creature can only stare in shock as Yunsi sheds his skin like an insect. He emerges completely unharmed, leaving the threads behind with his old skin. But the effort seems to have taken a toll, as he's clearly feeling the strain. He looks down at his hand, realizing the threads left behind a corrosive substance. The spider creature taunts him, revealing its skin is coated in a powerful acid. It sneers, telling him to just lie down and die like the monster he is. The acid begins to eat away at Yunsi's flesh, a pain he hasn't felt before. The creature then spits a stream of the same corrosive liquid directly at his face. Yunsi stumbles back, realizing with a jolt that it's not just acid, but a potent poison. His opponent can only laugh watching the poison take effect. Yunsi's body begins to go numb, and he knows he can't just regenerate from this. He grits his teeth, desperately trying to think of a way out of this. And then he remembers the small potion he took from the adventurers. He has no idea what the potion will do, but it's his only hope. With no other options, he desperately reaches for the small vial. He struggles against the paralysis, his body refusing to obey. Finally, his fingers close around the potion he'd almost forgotten. He prays that this gamble will pay off, downing the entire thing in one go. For a moment, nothing happens, and he grits his teeth in anticipation. But then he feels the pain and numbness begin to fade away. In an instant, his body is completely healed, the poison purged from his system. He looks down at his hand, which was dissolving down to the bone just moments ago. He sends a silent, heartfelt thank you to the witch who unknowingly saved his life. He admits that was the closest he's come to death in over 200 years. A chilling thought crosses his mind of what would happen if he used his full power on humans. But his focus returns to the captives and the cruelty of the other monster. He clenches his fist, knowing this isn't about being some hero of justice. His motivations are far more personal. He can't let innocent women be taken when he has his own plans for the future. He decides he doesn't need a grand excuse to put down a creature that vile. With the pain and numbness completely gone, he stretches, ready for round 2. He remembers the creature's scent and realizes with a jolt where it must be heading. And sure enough, the spider creature has already found the hidden wagon. Inside, the captive women can only tremble, their nightmare far from over. One of the women sits defiantly in the driver's seat, holding the reins. But from the trees above, the spider creature watches, admiring its new prize. It wonders aloud what kind of cruel game it should play with her first. But its thoughts are cut short as a projectile smashes into the tree beside it. The creature turns, its expression shifting to pure, unadulterated rage, because Yunsi has arrived, charging forward to finish what he started. The spider creature can only stare in disbelief, screaming about how he should be dead. Yunsi leaps through the air, launching another attack from a safe distance. The creature panics, worried that all the noise will allow the woman to escape. It complains that Yunsi is a mindless monster, unable to appreciate its cautious tactics. He prepares another projectile, ready to continue his long-range assault. He knows his aim is more than good enough to keep the wagon from escaping. This has now become a battle of attrition, a test of endurance between them. But the spider creature is quickly losing its patience with this game. It screams that if Yunsi won't come closer, it will gladly close the distance itself. Yunsi, however, stands his ground, ready for the coming charge. He immediately launches another projectile, forcing the creature to fall back. The spider creature is enraged, screaming at him to stop running and fight. But it's the one throwing debris now, which Yunsi effortlessly dodges. The spider creature can only stare, realizing its opponent is far more agile than it expected. Yunsi easily dodges another projectile, realizing his opponent is just as cautious. But the spider creature scoffs, claiming it was just a feint to close the distance. Its frustration boils over, a vein throbbing on its grotesque head. With a powerful leap, it finally charges in for a direct assault. The creature soars through the air, descending upon our hero. It brings its claws down with a furious scream, aiming for a killing blow. But instead of flesh, its attack only hits the ground, splashing its own poison, because Yunsi had already dodged, using the opening to create more distance. He pivots off a nearby tree with a powerful punch, letting the creature know that this is all going according to his plan. The spider creature falls back, realizing Yunsi is controlling the flow of battle. So Yunsi decides to up the ante, ripping an entire tree from the ground. He hurls it like a javelin, continuing his relentless long-range assault. The spider creature screams in frustration, demanding he stop running and fight properly. But Yunsi knows that a creature like this has no right to speak of honor, because to him, this isn't a battle, it's an extermination. He launches another projectile with pinpoint accuracy, which smashes directly into the creature's head with devastating force. The force of the impact sends the monster reeling backward, completely stunned. It struggles to its feet, dazed and disoriented from the powerful blow. Yunsi pants heavily, the strain of the prolonged battle finally showing. He leans over, completely exhausted from the relentless exchange. The moon hangs high in the sky, a silent witness to their endless duel. He straightens up, his body aching with a fatigue he's never felt before. He realizes with a jolt that this battle of attrition has been raging for over a month. The spider creature can't understand why this monster is so difficult to put down. Its rage grows, unable to comprehend this strange stalemate. Yunsi's mind is reeling, the prolonged fight clouding his thoughts. He knows his opponent doesn't need to eat or sleep, giving it a massive advantage. And finally, the creature realizes it has completely run out of both thread and poison. With its special abilities gone, the spider creature is now a sitting duck. Yunsi's relentless assault finally begins to take its toll. The creature can't comprehend why it's suddenly feeling so much pain. A memory surfaces of its own creation, a past it desperately wanted to forget. But Yunsi has no sympathy for the monster's plight. With its back against the wall, the creature charges forward in a final, desperate rage. But Yunsi meets its charge with a barrage of his own. He moves in close, ready to end this fight once and for all. His bladed tail whips around, slicing through the creature's defenses. A final, devastating blow sends his opponent flying across the battlefield. The spider creature can only whimper in pain, its body completely broken. It tries to drag itself away, but its strength is finally gone. But Yunsi stands over it, preparing to deliver the final blow. He brings his fist down, ending the creature's miserable existence in a single strike. Its final moments are a silent scream of pure, unadulterated agony. With the battle finally over, Yunsi turns and walks away from the carnage. He lets out his exhaustion with a frustrated punch against a nearby wall. But as he looks down, he realizes the month-long battle has taken a strange toll. Because his eye begins to melt and reform into something completely new. He can only stare in confusion, as it becomes a massive, unblinking orb. A title card confirms the language being spoken is that of the Foltriz Empire. The spider creature stammers in shock, recognizing Yunsi as something familiar. And Yunsi realizes with grim certainty that this creature is just like him. But any sense of kinship is replaced by a single cold thought. It must die. The creature breaks down, begging for help as tears stream down its face. It tries to flee, its desperate pleas echoing through the forest. It screams that they're the same, that they should be comrades. But its words are cut short by a final, merciless blow. Yunsi looks down at the remains, coldly rejecting any notion that they were ever alike. The moon hangs in the sky, a silent witness to the end of a tragic existence. With the battle finally over, Yunsi stands on a cliff surveying the new landscape. He internally recaps his bizarre situation, waking up after 2 centuries as a monster. And after a month of non-stop fighting, he finds himself looking down at a settlement nestled in the trees. He's arrived in the Einherjar Republic, the homeland of the elves. But a stray thought reminds him of his original plan to scout the kingdom of Canaan, a mission he'd almost forgotten in the chaos of the last month. A quick mental map confirms his journey has taken him far from his intended path. He approaches a massive wall, noting the elves have seemingly abandoned science for more primitive defenses. He recalls that the elves' worship of nature means limited development, which in turn leads to a higher monster population. And he realizes these simple ballistas are the best weapons this nation has to offer against them. He notes with some disappointment that their defenses haven't changed in 2 centuries. After being thoroughly underwhelmed by Canaan's forces, he decided to check out the Einherjar Republic for himself. He leaps down a massive cliff, heading for a good vantage point. And after 16 days of observation, he's learned quite a bit about the elves. He's come to the conclusion that they are on a completely different level. While humans need to chant their spells, elves can cast magic instantly. Their spells are not only more powerful, but seemingly limitless, a fact he finds completely unfair. Magic is so ingrained in their daily lives that they use it for the most mundane tasks. But he knows the true horror of elven magic lies somewhere else entirely. He waits in the bushes, sensing that it's almost time. And he realizes with a jolt that the greatest threat has finally arrived. A group of elven women bathing in a nearby river. A sight that he admits is a very real and present danger to his focus. He confirms that the legends of their beauty are, in fact, entirely true. He's been observing this dangerous species for a while now, and decides it's time to move on. He makes his way to his second observation point. Using his enhanced vision to get a closer look at the settlement, he focuses on one particular elf, a woman surrounded by children. He identifies her as a teacher, and one of the 2 most powerful elves he's observed so far. He's given her the temporary designation of number 6 in his mind. She leads the children into the river for a swim, a picture of tranquility. And Yunsi's human mind can't help but appreciate the scenic view. He pushes his enhanced vision to its limits, trying to get a closer look. But the teacher suddenly pauses as if sensing she's being watched. Yunsi freezes in the bushes, wondering if he should continue his observation. But his reconnaissance is interrupted by one of the mischievous children. The teacher finds herself the target of a playful prank by the young boys. She scolds them with a mix of frustration and amusement, telling them to behave. With the lesson over, she leads the children away from the river. He's satisfied with his observation of number 6 and prepares to move on. But his departure is cut short by a sudden, powerful presence. A blindfolded elf appears out of nowhere, her aura radiating immense power. He mentally dubs her number 8, realizing she's arrived earlier than usual. The sheer pressure she exudes leaves him completely overwhelmed, a testament to the terrifying power of the elves. He admits she's the other elf he's been watching, drawn in by her striking appearance. He notes she's always accompanied by 2 attendants, suggesting she holds a high rank in their society. She and her companions prepare to enter the water, completely at ease in their surroundings. He wonders about the reason she keeps her eyes closed, a mystery that only adds to her powerful presence. Her bathing ritual is different from the others, a solemn act that only deepens the mystery surrounding her. He realizes that this is precisely why he must be so careful, because he can't afford to miss a single move from these terrifyingly powerful elves. He slumps down, the sheer weight of his situation hitting him all at once. He clenches his fist, a mix of frustration and resolve building within him. A sudden realization seems to dawn on him. He understands now that this is just how things are. But knowing that doesn't make his own powerlessness feel any less hollow. The feeling reminds him of the spider creature's desperate final moments. He recalls that the other soldier awakened much earlier than he did, and he wonders if that same sense of emptiness is what ultimately drove it to madness. He can't help but feel a flicker of sympathy for that other beast, because he knows there's a very real chance he could end up just as broken. He quickly shakes the dark thought from his mind. Thankful for the emotional inhibitor that keeps such despair at bay, he looks up at the sky, noticing the sun has begun to set. Knowing the elves won't return after dark, he decides to prepare for the night. He pulls out the cooler he scavenged from the ruins and begins to prepare the small animal he caught for dinner. He happily uses the magic sword to slice the meat into perfect skewers, but his good mood vanishes as he realizes the food is completely tasteless. The night passes under the cold light of the moon. He leaves behind a small memento, a silent tribute to a tragic life, and for the first time in a long time, he allows himself to rest. His monstrous body lies still amidst the fallen leaves. He tosses and turns in his sleep, a restless slumber for a creature out of time. He sits up, a new thought taking hold in his mind. He realizes that if he returns to the Fultree's empire, he might find other survivors of the experiment. It's a truth he's known for a while now. He has to go home. But he's been unable to take that final step, held back by a past he can't let go of.
He's traveled through an endless sea of trees,
fought through ruins infested with monsters, and pieced together the final desperate days of his homeland. He knows in his heart that the empire is likely gone forever, but he can't let go of the sliver of hope that it might still exist somewhere. He's terrified of ending up broken and insane, just like the other soldier, a fear that only hardens his resolve. And while observing the elves has been a welcome distraction, he knows he can't keep running from the truth forever. The weight of his past is a burden he can no longer ignore. With his mind made up, he sets his sights on the imperial capital. As a new day dawns, his long journey finally begins. He gathers his few belongings, preparing to leave the elven lands behind. With his supplies secured, he's finally ready to face his past. He takes one last look out over the forest before turning away. He offers a silent farewell to the powerful elves he's been watching. Unaware of his departure, life for the elves continues as peacefully as ever. But he can't help but take one final lingering look back. A moment of hesitation, a silent acknowledgement of what he's leaving. He admits he was only deceiving himself and forces his feet to move forward. But elsewhere, a painful memory surfaces for a young witch. A memory of a sinister man and a twisted offer to become a great mage. She remembers the feeling of being trapped, her struggles completely ignored, a feeling of pure disgust that has haunted her for years. She recalls crying herself to sleep, desperate to return to her family, clinging to the hope that she might one day escape. But her captor only saw her as a tool, pushing her to become what he wanted. And in the present, that same determination burns in Lena's eyes. But her journey leads her to a scene of utter devastation, and the sight of her ruined home shatters her resolve completely. Lena wakes with a start, the nightmare still fresh in her mind. A wave of panic washes over her as the memories return. A single thought echoes in the darkness. This is the absolute worst. She's now in the town of Readoki, within the kingdom of Canaan. She walks through the streets, her determined presence drawing stares from the locals. But her mind is fixed on one thing, the monster she's hunting. She recalls being captured by slavers, only for that creature to appear amidst the chaos. A woman who was also captive explains that the slavers fled at the sight of him, but she can't understand why the monster then took their wagon. She tells Lena that the creature looked them over before simply leaving without taking anything. The woman explains that just when they thought he was gone, the monster suddenly returned. He simply stared at them for a moment before leaving again without a word. Lena considers this, chalking it up to a woman's intuition. The other woman admits that the monster's gaze seemed to be focused on a very specific area, Lena asks if she's sure he wasn't looking at her with ulterior motives, but the woman says she didn't get that impression. Lena points out that the woman is quite beautiful, which might have been the reason for his attention. The woman laughs it off, teasing Lena and offering her a job if she ever needs money. Lena smiles, appreciating the light-hearted moment and promising to consider the offer. The bell on the door chimes as she prepares to leave. And with that, Lena steps back out into the bustling town, her hunt continuing. She's certain the monster is somewhere in Canaan and knows she's closing in. Meanwhile, another group of adventurers celebrates a successful quest. But as they pass, Lena can't help but feel a strange sense of unease. The moment triggers a painful memory of the man who first discovered her talent. She recalls being tricked by her master when she was only 8 years old. He forced her through a brutal training regimen, promising greatness, but when she finally escaped and returned home, she found only ruins. Her entire village had been wiped out by monsters, leaving nothing behind. The memory of that day sends a fresh wave of despair through her. A painful reminder of everything she has lost in her life. She thinks back on her past, a time when she was just trying to survive. Hunting monsters was a daily routine, a life where even fellow adventurers couldn't be trusted. Her only motivation was a burning desire to wipe every last monster from the face of the earth. It was during this dark period in her life that she first met the two siblings who would change everything. They saw her fighting alone and offered her a place on their team. It was the first time she'd ever been a part of a real adventuring party. Soon after, another adventurer joined their ranks, bringing a carefree energy to the group. Together, the four of them faced countless dangers, forging a bond in the heat of battle. And over time, they became more than just a team. They became a family. A memory of Gista, bloodied but triumphant after a difficult battle. Renat tends to their fallen friend, who jokes that he thought it was the end for him. Lena suggests that Gista, as their leader, should be the one to carry the magic sword they recovered. She teases him, telling him to become a man worthy of wielding it. Her words leave the young adventurer completely flustered. These were the moments she cherished, a time when this team was the only real home she'd ever known. But that happiness was stolen from her, because monsters always seem to appear and take away everything she holds dear. And that sword is the last proof that her family ever existed, a memento she will get back no matter the cost. Renat can only watch, tears streaming down her face as she makes a solemn vow. Lena looks back one last time, her resolve hardened, and with that, she turns and walks away, beginning her long and lonely hunt. Each step takes her further into the unknown. Meanwhile, Unsi arrives in a land scarred by war. He muses that the battlefield was an easy place to find. His journey has taken him southeast from the elven lands, straight towards the heart of his old empire. He finally reaches the outskirts of a ruined city, just as the sun begins to set. He believes this is the town of Idlis, though it's too destroyed to be certain. But his survey is cut short as something foul splatters against his face. He immediately blames the elves he was just watching, imagining they've somehow gotten their revenge. He clenches his fist, a mix of disgust and resignation. But he quickly tries to make a joke of it, figuring it's fair payback for his recent reconnaissance. A thumbs up to himself for his imperial-style humor. But the joke does little to lift the profound sense of emptiness that's settled over him. He pushes the feeling aside and runs through the night, unable to rest. His body moves with a relentless animalistic speed. His gaze is fixed forward, his mind set on reaching his destination. But his journey is brought to a sudden halt as he spots something in the distance. Before him stands the Iron Tower of Cheval, a familiar landmark from his past. He can't help but admire the tower, a testament to his empire's enduring technology. The sight brings back a painful memory of the family he once shared this view with. Spurred on by the past, he pushes forward with renewed urgency. He knows this place is filled with memories, a thought that brings both comfort and pain. But his solemn journey is suddenly interrupted by a familiar sound. A massive horde of goblins emerges from the ruins, blocking his path. He's not surprised, having smelled their foul stench from a mile away. He notes their sheer numbers, guessing a queen must be nearby. But instead of annoyance, a grim smile spreads across his face. This is the perfect warm-up. The goblins can only stare in terror as they realize what they've just cornered. He tells them he just needs to blow off some steam. And with that, he unleashes a devastating blast of energy from his eye. The beam carves a path of absolute destruction through their ranks, leaving nothing but scorched earth and silence in its wake. The entire horde is wiped out in a single, overwhelming attack. A testament to the new power he gained from his month-long battle. With the path cleared, he continues his journey at a relentless pace. He knows the extermination took some time, but he should be close to the town of Iga now. He uses his enhanced vision to scan the horizon, finally spotting the ruins of his destination through the trees. He notes the devastation is far worse than he could have imagined, but a strange sense of unease tells him this place is different from the other ruins. Something is fundamentally wrong here. While the other towns were overgrown with green, this one is just a lifeless gray, a city of ash completely devoid of life, and the terrible premonition he's been fighting has just been mercilessly confirmed. The entire city has been burned to the ground. He wonders if the elves' magic was responsible for such complete annihilation. But then another, more horrifying thought begins to take hold. He wonders if this is the result of his empire deploying its ultimate weapon, a possibility he knows is all too real for his homeland. And if they used it on the capital itself, the thought is too horrifying to complete. He knows he should rest after running non-stop and fighting goblins, but an overwhelming urgency drives him towards the imperial capital. His face is a mask of grim determination. He pushes his body to its absolute limit, until a sudden realization brings him to a halt. He wonders how he could have missed something that was right in front of him the whole time. But the truth is, he simply didn't want to see it. He stands at the edge of a vast, barren wasteland, a landscape so utterly destroyed it defies all comprehension. In the center lies a massive crater, a deep and permanent scar upon the earth. He leaps down into the devastation, needing to see it for himself. His feet sink into the strange, glass-like sand underfoot. He wonders if this is what a beach feels like, a place he's never seen. But the grim reality of his surroundings quickly shatters the thought. He questions what kind of explosive could possibly create a crater of this magnitude. He understands now why other nations would abandon science, if this is its ultimate end. He can only ask his beloved homeland what terrible tragedy it unleashed upon the world. He can only wonder if his empire's relentless pursuit of science was the wrong path all along. The weight of it all finally breaks him, and a silent scream of pure anguish tears through his monstrous form. A cry of loss for a home that no longer exists, echoing across a wasteland that has forgotten its name. But his emotional inhibitor quickly kicks in, forcing the grief down as he recalls his time observing the elves. He remembers focusing on the smallest details, trying to find any distraction from the truth. Admitting to himself that the powerful number 8 was a particularly effective one, he even imagined a cheerful greeting, a desperate attempt to feel like a person again. But the reality always came crashing back. His empire had fallen, and by its own hand. And so he rationalizes his mission, telling himself that to survive, he must study the greatest threat in this new world. And that's why he continues to observe the elves, a very convenient distraction. But a small part of him knows this is just him escaping from reality. A truth he can't deny no matter how hard he tries, because he'd held on to the hope that if the empire survived, they could turn him back. But that hope was completely shattered by the devastation before him. He doesn't hate this monstrous form, but he always believed he could be human again. Now he's faced with the question of whether he'll be alone forever, unable to speak. But his mind immediately conjures a powerful distraction to keep the despair at bay. He credits his lingering human instincts for keeping him from going completely mad. He considers just embracing his new life, but the memory of the other soldiers' fate stops him cold. He vows that he will never allow himself to become like that. He tells himself that he's fine, that he hasn't given in to despair just yet. He decides to focus on making the most of his new life, finding joy where he can. But as he considers his situation, one major complaint comes to mind. The fact that every single meal he eats is completely and utterly bland. With the Empire's salt gone and no way to trade, he realizes his only option is to resort to looting. And with that, he sets his sights on Canaan, determined to get some salt. And so, Yunsi's new quest for proper seasoning officially begins. But meanwhile, in a town in Canaan, a certain man is having a very bad day. He clutches his head in pure, unadulterated frustration. Arngale looks down at the mercenary captain, his patience clearly wearing thin. He scolds Orlando for his inability to handle basic paperwork, a skill he should have learned long ago. The commander can only shrink in his seat, completely out of his element. But he quickly tries to play it off with a nonchalant whistle, only enraging Arngale further. With a sigh of resignation, Arngale decides to just read the important parts of the report himself. Orlando listens as the official debriefing begins. The report details the complete destruction of a goblin colony, seemingly wiped out by a single entity. Orlando admits that after his own encounter with Yunsi, he's inclined to believe it's the same creature's handiwork. He knows the monster they faced is a disaster-class threat, and that the damage will only grow if they do nothing. Arngale considers the grim news, realizing the bounty on this new monster will have to be raised accordingly. Orlando declares with a confident grin that his mercenary group will be the one to take down the monster and claim the reward. Arngale, however, looks completely unimpressed by his bravado. He sighs, pointing out that Orlando's desire for money is written all over his face. He tells the commander to keep his battle lust in check, but Orlando just laughs it off, admitting he still wants the cash. Arngale explains that with new weapons being purchased to counter this threat, he needs Orlando to train his new recruits on any available mission. But Orlando knows that while their weapons are improving, they're still severely lacking in skilled mages. A problem Arngale confirms is plaguing even the great magical kingdom of Caesarea. The thought sends Orlando into a daydream, imagining a beautiful and powerful mage who would join them for free. He gets lost in the fantasy, much to Arngale's silent disapproval. But his daydream is shattered when Arngale threatens to tell Annie exactly what he was just thinking, sending the commander into a panic. Arngale just smiles, wondering why the commander would bring up Annie's name. He then dangles the promise of a 200-year-old liquor, enough to make any man forget his troubles. The thought of the cost leaves Orlando completely broken, but he quickly accepts the offer, bowing in gratitude for the free drinks. Just then, Annie appears in the doorway, asking why he's suddenly feeling so generous. And behind her, the entire mercenary group cheers, ready for a night on their captain's tab. Arngale smirks, calling it punishment for Orlando's poor study habits. And so the commander's wallet is about to take a serious hit. But elsewhere, Yunsi's own quest for supplies is well underway, and it seems he's just run into a group of very unfortunate bandits. He arrives to find a scene of utter carnage, the aftermath of a brutal bandit attack. The surviving bandits are shocked by his sudden appearance, unable to understand his intentions. He identifies the victims as a merchant and their guards, while the bandits try to stand their ground. His gaze falls upon one of the victims, noting the state she was left in, and his human instincts once again get sidetracked by the details. He offers a silent, almost awkward prayer for the fallen, unsure of what else to do. But a sudden realization snaps him out of his solemn mood. The bandits realize with dawning horror that their weapons are completely useless against him. They try to intimidate him, questioning why he won't just leave them be. But Yunsi decides he's had enough, swatting one of them aside with contemptuous ease. He unleashes a devastating punch, not bothering to hold back his strength. The bandit's body is sent flying, leaving his companion frozen in terror. The others can only scream as he walks past them without a word. He knows it's far too late for them to even think about running. Because once he starts, there's no way for him to stop the carnage. The remaining bandits finally break, scattering in a desperate attempt to flee. But Yunsi easily closes the distance with a single, powerful leap. One of them stumbles and falls, looking back in absolute horror. He's completely paralyzed by fear, unable to even get back up. Yunsi towers over him as the man begs for his life to be spared. But his mind is elsewhere, recalling a lesson from a very memorable teacher. A lesson he seems to be taking to heart in this very moment. He moves with blinding speed, shattering the bandit's spear with a single kick. The follow-up strike is swift and utterly devastating. He pauses for a moment, admitting his own teacher was a man, but the lesson still applies. He stands over the aftermath, the forest floor now littered with the remains of the bandits. He admits to himself that he always tends to overdo it, and this time was no exception. But he quickly rationalizes that since they were killers, he simply saved Kanan the trouble of dealing with them. And now he decides it's time to collect his payment for the extermination. His eyes light up as he finds exactly what he was looking for, a wagon full of salt. The bandits scream in terror, begging for their lives as they flee. Their cries for help echo through the forest as they scatter. And just like that, the battlefield is empty, the bandits gone. Yunsi can't help but feel a profound sense of satisfaction. He proudly displays his prize, 2 large containers of precious salt. His mind is already filled with visions of all the delicious meals he can finally enjoy. But he admits that for all the trouble, the loot was surprisingly disappointing. Besides the salt, which was carefully packed in wool, the only other thing he found was a rather plain-looking urn. He'd hoped it was a magic item, given the ornate box it was in, but it seems his luck ran out. He tries everything he can think of, but the urn seems completely inert. He then realizes it can't even be used as a bottle, since it has a massive hole in the bottom. He figures it must have been part of a decorative statue, a fountain piece, and whatever its original purpose, it's completely useless to him now. With a frustrated sigh, he simply tosses the worthless item aside. He decides to head back to the Islecool shopping mall at dawn to find a proper container for his salt. He considers his recent travels between Canaan and the Elven lands, realizing he needs a central base of operations, and the ruins of his old empire seem like the most logical choice. A new plan begins to form, one that fills him with a sudden burst of excitement. He'll gather all the necessary supplies and create a home for himself in this new world. He's filled with a boyish excitement, imagining building his own secret base. He decides on a location north of Idlis, a perfect spot between Canaan and the Elven lands. He knows tomorrow will be a busy day, and he can hardly wait to get started. And so, after a bit of travel, he finally returns to the ruins of his homeland. He believes he's getting close to the town of Idlis, his chosen location. But something suddenly makes him stop in his tracks. He spots an unnatural color in the distance, something that doesn't belong in the forest. The trees are blocking his view, so he decides to get a closer look. He rushes through the dense woods towards the strange object, and uses his enhanced vision to finally get a clear picture. His eyes widen in absolute shock at what he's discovered. He can't believe it, wondering if it's really that place. A cold sweat breaks out as the grim reality sets in. But he knows there's no point in trying to avoid it now, because the building he's found in the middle of the forest is an all-too-familiar structure from his past. It's a perfect match for the research facility where he first awoke, a place he's been actively trying not to think about, the very place where this entire nightmare began. And now that he's found it, he knows he can't just ignore it. He tightens his grip on his pack, his knuckles turning white, and with a heavy heart, he approaches the research facility. But elsewhere, Lena finds herself facing a fortress wall crawling with goblins. She seems completely unfazed by the sight, almost amused that she's been sent to deal with such a minor threat. She explains to the soldiers that this place is nothing special, despite its history. But the ensuing battle is anything but simple. The chaos brings back a familiar, unwelcome feeling. She admits to herself she only took this job for the money, because that monster she's hunting left her completely broke after she crossed the border. But her journey is interrupted by a man trying to get her attention. She turns and sarcastically asks him how much he's willing to pay for her time. A sigh of pure frustration escapes her. She's clearly tired of this. She simply walks away, leaving the man completely confused. She tells him to take his business elsewhere, as he's in the presence of a queen. Her sharp retort leaves the would-be suitor completely stunned. His friend quickly informs him that he just tried to hit on a legendary mage. The man realizes with dawning horror that she's from the powerful kingdom of Caesarea. His friend explains that her name is a mark of immense power, not to be taken lightly, and the two of them are just thankful they managed to escape the encounter with their lives. The men can't help but admire her, admitting that her beauty is a powerful weapon in itself. One of the soldiers gives his partner a confident thumbs up, and they share a moment of camaraderie before the battle begins. But their confidence is shattered as a goblin's projectile finds its mark. His friend can only cry out his name as he falls. The next morning, the battle begins in earnest. The mages unleash a volley of fireballs against the goblin-infested walls. But Lena knows this requires a more personal touch. She unleashes a massive wave of dark energy, a spell of overwhelming power. The other mages can only stare in awe, realizing she's on a completely different level from them. She asks him not to use that name, as it brings back painful memories of her former master. He tells her she's out of mana and should fall back for a rest. He gives her a knowing, almost teasing smile. She slumps down on the platform, completely exhausted from the fight, but his next words seem to catch her completely off guard. He playfully scolds her for pushing herself to the limit, reminding her that mercenaries are only reliable when there's a paycheck involved. She admits to herself there was another reason she took this job. A knight was sent to observe them. The knight in question then barks out orders, demanding they keep damage to the fortress minimal so it can be reused. Lena can only scoff at the nobles who make demands from the safety of the back lines. She watches the soldiers walk away, her frustration with this entire mission growing. The soldiers note that the goblins were surprisingly resilient, but are now out of ammunition. With their defenses broken, the outer wall is taken in a matter of moments. The main gate groans open, allowing the rear guard to finally push inside. And there they find their final target, the Goblin Queen, surrounded by her last remaining guards. One of the soldiers charges forward, his blade raised to end her reign. He brings his sword down with a single decisive strike, ending the battle. Another mage watches the aftermath, noting how easily the queen was dispatched once her legs were broken. The fortress is secured, a complete victory with relatively few casualties. The knight laughs, loudly taking all the credit for the successful operation. But Lena can only glare at him with pure contempt, knowing he did nothing but get in the way. The man praises her impressive display of power, a wide grin on his face. But his expression suggests he has more than just business on his mind. Lena, however, is completely fed up with the unwanted attention she constantly receives. She assumes this new man is just another one of them, much to his confusion. He quickly tries to clarify that this is strictly a professional matter, but she remains skeptical, questioning what kind of work he could possibly offer. The blonde man introduces them as Orlando, captain of the Dawn's battlefield mercenaries, and his companion, Lloyd. Orlando gets straight to the point, telling her he wants to hire her for a job. Her interest is piqued when he mentions the rumors of a new monster species. He explains that his group has already had a run-in with the creature, and they're desperately in need of powerful mages. Orlando explains that a mage of her caliber would be a massive help. His words make her pause, her interest finally piqued. She turns back with a fierce glare, demanding to hear every last detail. Meanwhile, Yunsi stands before the familiar, sterile walls of the research facility. But as he approaches, a strange question enters his mind. He wonders why the main gate, which he couldn't budge, is now standing wide open. He looks at the hole he made, noticing the edges look like they've been melted. His attention is then drawn to a small, strange creature moving inside. He peers down the elevator shaft he climbed, noting it doesn't seem as deep as he remembered, and he sees that the top of the elevator car has also been melted through. He's confused by all the inconsistencies he's finding in this familiar place. He looks at his hand, noticing the faint remnants of the spider creature's threads. He realizes this must be where that other soldier, the spider creature, had been sleeping. After squeezing his way down from the elevator shaft, he finds another one of the facility's massive gates standing wide open. But a faint rhythmic hum suddenly catches his attention. He wonders if the facility's power is still running, and if the gate was open all along. He knows he has to investigate further. He discovers the facility has its own self-sustaining power source, using the flow of groundwater. And that means there might be a working computer, a chance to finally get some real answers. He accesses the main computer, learning the facility's power will only last another 300 days. But he realizes this underground fortress is the perfect place for a secret base. And with that, he officially decides to make this his new home. He immediately begins gathering any useful supplies he can find. With his pack full, he decides to head back to the Isle Cool ruins for more gear. But first, he has one very important mission to attend to. A mission that involves observing the local elven population. A task he takes very, very seriously. He tells himself this reconnaissance is a vital part of his supply-gathering operation. He watches as the teacher scolds some of the younger elves for their playful antics. He decides to narrate the scene in his head, a private commentary. One of the children proudly shows off a fish he caught, earning her praise. But the moment is cut short as the boy tosses the fish to his friend. The prank escalates as the fish lands on her head while another boy pulls at her clothes. She's left completely flustered by their mischievous attack. He yanks with all his might, determined to see his prank through. She tries to regain her composure, but the children are relentless. The young elf laughs, completely enjoying his teacher's predicament. And in an instant, they succeed, leaving her completely exposed and mortified. And from the bushes, Yunsi watches the scene with a satisfied, almost proud expression. He gives the kids a mental thumbs up, impressed by their escalating pranks. He muses that elves aren't so different from humans, but knows building a relationship with them is impossible. Still, their long lives might hold answers about the past, if only he could find a way to communicate. For now, he decides to take things one step at a time. With his morale officially boosted, he decides it's time to head back to the Empire. Meanwhile, in the Canaanite town of Rakol, business continues as usual. But inside an office, Arngale reads a report with a grim expression. He lets out a heavy sigh, the weight of the news clearly settling in. A sudden knock at the door breaks the silence, and he tells them to enter. The visitor is none other than Orlando, who asks what seems to be the problem. The door opens to reveal an older man, the captain of another mercenary group named Marcus. Arngale looks up, surprised by the sudden appearance of the veteran commander. Marcus explains that a new subjugation order has been issued, a joint operation with the Lord's army. He questions the timing, finding it suspicious that an official order would come so quickly after the monster's attack on the caravan. Arngale grits his teeth, explaining that the order came directly from the local lord. He reveals that among the stolen goods was a replica of a famous artifact, the very urn Yunse had found and discarded. Arngale's frustration boils over, enraged that they're being sent to fight an unknown enemy for a worthless item. He rants about the unfairness of it all, where mercenaries are treated as nothing more than disposable pawns. Marcus listens to the younger man's outburst with a calm, stoic expression. But Orlando steps in, telling Arngale not to blame himself, knowing he's doing the best he can in a difficult situation. But Marcus apologizes, explaining that his own mercenary group will not be joining the mission. Arngale understands completely, admitting he'd do the same to protect his younger members. But Marcus clarifies that while most of his men will stay back, the unit that already fought the monster will be forced to participate. The news sends Orlando and his companion into a state of absolute shock. Marcus simply laughs, admitting he didn't think they'd be able to handle it anyway. The veteran commander then turns away, his expression growing somber. He admits that getting older has made him far more cautious than he used to be, and he tells Arngale that he has a terrible feeling about this, a premonition he can't shake. Meanwhile, Yunsi happily stomps through the forest, declaring this a land where humans do not belong.